Just wanted to get clear. There's a lot of discussion around pending legislation, and just for those that may be watching, I know Chair White, myself, and others were interested in putting forth proposals to kind of ensure that residents didn't feel the pinch of rent increasing nearly 10%. In order to do that on an emergency basis, we could not have a fiscal impact with the legislation. And my understanding is that DHCD said that such legislation would incur a cost, that it would require additional FTEs of the agency. And I would just like to get a sense of what is the financial burden that legislation before the council would have placed on the agency. So specifically, I'll talk about the proposal that I was interested in that would have capped a rent increase on rent control properties at 5%. Can you speak, Director, to what would have been the financial burden on DHCD in order to help implement this legislation on an emergency basis?
So the fiscal impact of changing direction would have included doing new petitions, the inquiries that we would have to follow up on. There would be additional duties, administrative duties that surround that, just change in direction. So, those are some of the things that would have to happen at this point.
And is there a dollar figure you can give us?
I have not quantified it exactly, but I'm happy to quantify that, as I mentioned to Chairman White, and send you the estimate.
Okay. Do you know when we might be able to get that estimate? Might it be before tomorrow morning?
Probably not, sir. I would have to speak to my agency fiscal officer and ask her how long it would take.
So I'm curious. So if the agency is saying, yes, we would incur a fiscal impact, which essentially precludes the council from advancing emergency legislation, yet there isn't a specific dollar amount you can provide, how are we to ensure that that is an accurate assessment?
Well, again, I can provide you with the fiscal impact, but it's sort of runs logically. The information in terms of petitions have gone out already on the current increase. We would have to draw those back. So that would be a cost. New petitions and inquiries would also be a cost. We would have to also take away from the individuals that are currently working on the RAD database. So that would be a cost. So just while I can't quantify exactly right now how much it would be, but all those things and changing direction and even creating a process for doing that, since that hasn't been done before, would be a cost. Again, I'm happy to give you an exact quantification estimate, but just logically, it would be a cost.
And can you give a range of what you anticipate that cost might be?
It would be at least one FTE, I would suppose.
Okay, one FTE. And I just want to get clear, what is that dollar amount? Is that like roughly 100,000, under $100,000?
So, Councilmember Parker, I don't want to venture a guess and then have you come back and say, oh, it was 100, it was 80. So I'd rather just take the time and give you accurate information.
Okay. Okay, I appreciate that, and it would require DHCD to maintain at least one FTE. And so while I am sensitive to the fact that it would require work and folk would need to be compensated for that work, another question I would have is there no internal capacity where one could, for the sake of people not incurring close to a 10% increase in rent, take on that work, even if it's in a temporary basis? Because I want residents to understand that the council wants to act. The stipulations before us require that emergency legislation does not have a fiscal impact. And the barrier between rent rising nearly 10% for rent controlled properties and it not is DHCD saying the agency will incur a fiscal impact. And what I'm hearing you say is, well, we actually don't even know what that fiscal impact would be.
So Councilmember Parker, I just wanted to just make very clear to the residents of the District of Columbia that DHCD did not set the rent increase. So
I'm clear, but in order to process
like
the legislation that would stop the increase, or not, I shouldn't say stop the increase, cap the increase, which myself and other members are interested in, the response we got from DHCD was that is not possible because it would incur a cost. And if we are saying that it would only be 1 FTE, to me, it seems difficult to square that we couldn't find that capacity in-house within the agency, which is pretty massive, in order to save thousands of people from potentially being displaced from the city.
So let me just, this is sort of the challenge of me even giving an estimate, because you just said that the agency said that we said it would only be 1 FTE. What I was saying would be a minimum of 1 FTE at least. So I just want to be really clear on that, right? So that's a challenge of me kind of venturing a guess and then having it come back to me. And that's why I want the time. I think in the time that we got the request for a fiscal impact, we had very little time to respond. And so we said, the question was, will there be an impact or not? The answer was, yes, there will be an impact. We are also focusing on the RAD database right now, which is taking a number of resources to make sure we get that on time and deliver to the district residents as promised. So what I'd like to say to you again is I'd like a moment, if you would give it to me, to give you what the fiscal impact is actually, so that we can be clear on what that is.
Yes. I trust that White and my colleagues want to work with you and the mayor to ensure that residents are not experiencing these drastic rent increases. And for landlords out there that may be watching, this isn't an attack on landlords, but it is to say that we need to be thoughtful about relief. And I trust Director Green, you are interested in that. But I just want to make sure people are clear that the roadblock between us right now on the council side is that we cannot advance emergency legislation that has a fiscal impact. And that fiscal impact is coming from DHCD, as we understand from our budget office. So I look forward to hearing more from you all on that. And my remaining, go for it.
Actually, I just also want to say our mission is to create affordable housing for, so we live that every day, and we do not want to see residents not have affordable housing. So we will get that to you as soon as possible, so that whatever decisions need to be made can be made.
Yeah, and I would say, I don't even know if this is possible, but if it is possible for tomorrow AM and we can move forward in the legislative meeting that the council has tomorrow, and somehow this could be worked out that emergency legislation can advance, I think that would be a win for the mayor's administration, the council, and more importantly, the district residents that are at risk of being displaced. Hi, Ms. Spooner. I didn't get a chance to ask questions of you, but I wanted to confirm your role with the agency.
I'm the agency fiscal officer.
Yes, that's what I thought. And so it was a bit surprising to hear that you hadn't even heard about the proposed legislation until our discussion today. And so how often are you weighing in on legislative matters or how they impact the agency in a financial way?
I do that fairly rarely. I will help the program staff price out what they say that they need, right? If someone says to me, you know, we need a grade 13 for, 6 months, and we need, this piece of software, and we need postage for 3,000 mailings, I'll help them price that. But I'm not a program expert, so it's not really my role to determine what widgets are required in order to produce the outcome that the legislation is asking for.
So is it fair to say if Director Green needs to get back on a dollar amount, and you are just hearing about this today, that you will be part of that discussion in determining what the cost might be to implement an emergency cap on rent increases. I'm just trying, like, would you be involved in that discussion traditionally?
I may be part if the program staff feels like they need my guidance.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to get clarity. And I would say it's a bit alarming to hear that although despite weeks of discussion with our budget office, with the agency, that you wouldn't have heard about this measure. On top of that, it's a fiscal cliff that is pretty important for the entire city. And so I just want to reiterate that I think it's the responsibility of the agency to kind of work with the council and the mayor to come up with a plan, and versus just allowing this to happen by default. Director, I want to
interrupt for 1 second. So in case I'm missing something, Councilmember, we received this request on Friday for fiscal impact, this past Friday.
That's not accurate. That's not accurate.
So that is when I got the message. So I'm not quite sure where the communication breakdown.
Maybe that's when you got the message, but that is not accurate.
Okay, well,
I'm happy to go back.
I'm
happy to go back through the timeline.
Okay, awesome.
I'm happy to go back through the timeline, but I would reiterate that this fiscal cliff is one for the city. It is not just connected to the emergency legislation, and the thing that is standing in between thousands of residents potentially being displaced from the city versus not is a fiscal impact that DHCD is saying it will incur. And the fiscal agent for your agency is saying they didn't know anything about it. The agency can't come up with a dollar amount. And so that is concerning. And we will follow up with you.
In